So it looks like George Santos has made some kind of joke about Jewish people. So he's showcasing that he is anti-Semitic, and we will get to look at his money scheme.
Santos tapes. This is a Beat exclusive. George Santos on tape discussing his scandals, finances, and problems on the road to this new indictment we saw today. And here are the facts. These tapes were recorded earlier this year in January and February by documentarian Blake Zeff, who's worked in government and recently did an MSNBC documentary about student loans. So they were recorded before this indictment for the charges that include allegedly illegally taking unemployment benefits, which, you're going to hear this for the first time tonight, George Santos discusses here on tape.
So the way I look at it is they're not understanding. The question is simple. George, why was your income $55,000 in 2020 and why is your income drastically higher? Well, here's the answer to that. We struck a deal with the company so nobody went unemployed and got reduced to like a very basic salary, just so we, as we called it, livable wages in the company, so we can get by, because our industry was capital introduction via vis-a-vis conferences, vis-a-vis speed dating, all that in private equity, and managing limited partner, general partner relationships and investment groups. So long story short, I went from 2019 bringing in 400 and something thousand dollars to, in 2020 my reported income was 55K. It was, couldn't be more legitimate. I actually qualified for unemployment.
Wow, wow. If you're making 400 something thousand dollars a year and you don't have any money saved up whatsoever, that's your own fault. And no, you don't qualify for unemployment if you're still making 55K a year, because that means you're employed.
Quote, I qualified for unemployment. This is newly revealed in these Santos tapes tonight at MSNBC exclusive. And as for the unemployment today, prosecutors say otherwise. Now, the new tapes may be relevant to this open case now. Santos also blamed people who worked for him when it came to other money issues. Now, here is what he told Zeff on this tape airing for the first time right now.
This is a very complicated process. You hire people throughout this process that are going to do you justice, and you hire people that won't do you justice. And the benefit of it all is I learned through this process, and we get to rectify no criminal conduct. It's an honest error. We're fixing it. Great. Second, I discovered that the person I trusted throughout this entire process might have not done some kind of insanity with, like, not negligent, but just unprofessional levels of financing filings on the FEC reports. Mm-hmm. You hire a fiduciary, you trust them. And you go to sleep at night like, oh, I hired a company, reputation, 30 years into business, has done a former congressman with his Elton stuff for 14 years.
This is brand new. George Santos there earlier this year speaking on tape for the first time. Very interesting, because at a minimum he seemed to show the awareness of some of these issues while making in that statement his type of defense, whether that's the same defense his lawyers and team ultimately pick at trial. All of this newsworthy tonight. Also, he discusses briefly how he thought he could beat it all.
We just saw Matt Gaetz survive a massive scandal. He's elected. We see members of Congress survive scandal on scandal.
There are members of Congress and many politicians, I bet you can name a few off the top of your head, who've survived scandals. But the member of Congress he mentions, Republican Matt Gaetz, was not ultimately charged by the feds. Today, Santos was. I should mention, as part of this reporting tonight, which you're only going to see right here, we reached out to Congressman Santos's office today. We did not hear back. If we do, we will report any of their response, including extending an offer to have him join me for an interview to discuss all of the above on these new Santos tapes tonight, which are only on the beat.
Flocked at me because I had a reputation already of being quick, aggressive, and good. And now I'm being held to, it feels really nice to make good money. But I had also previously, earlier in my career, had run into good fortune in business. So it's like people are attacking me for the slightest things.
New tapes of George Santos, the Santos tapes, only right here on The Beat on MSNBC. That is the congressman speaking earlier this year. The tapes made in January and February about a host of issues, including some that overlap with his new indictment. We are joined now by the documentarian and journalist behind those tapes, Blake Zeff, who also did an earlier documentary with MSNBC, as I mentioned, and MSNBC's longtime analyst, now a CEO of the Leadership Council on Civil Rights, Maya Wiley. Welcome to you both. Blake, I mentioned that you've done stuff in government and in reporting and here at MSNBC even. But no matter how much experience you have, on a night like tonight, wow, what you have on tape there. So we give the floor to you first. Tell us what you think this means. Obviously significant now in light of the congressman's indictment.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, these indictments felt inevitable. And having talked with the congressman, I talked to him for several hours over the course of several months. I mean, just to be clear on the background to this, we were looking to do a documentary with George Santos, just to explain for the viewers, how did he get these tapes? Met with him several times, had really long conversations with him, and eventually the project fell apart because he wanted lots of money from us. And that's sort of a journalistic no-no where you don't really pay for stories. And by the way, I'm not so sure that the ethics committee would allow him to take outside income. So there were all sorts of reasons why that might not have worked. So I just want to be clear about how we got them. And so I even think that that's part of the story, gives you a little bit of sense of how he's looking to monetize the office. In terms of this news, can't say that I'm surprised. I will tell you, though, that George Santos, I learned from my many meetings with him, is extremely confident. I think many people would be scared with all the negative press you get, but some people for them, infamy and fame are kind of the same thing. It's attention, and they love it, and they fuel off of it. And you might have even seen in the little gaggle he did today, he was taking questions, he was holding court. He was not, in the way that I think many other people would react, he did not look sad or chagrined or worried. So it's gonna be very interesting. I think George Santos is actually confident that he's going to beat this. And I don't know if there's legal relevance to these tapes, but I think they give a lot of kind of an inside picture into how he thinks and operates.
Absolutely. You make several important points. We had a prosecutor on earlier tonight who mentioned how much time he could be facing. I think you make a fair observation, Blake, that most people waking up today, going to federal court, surrendering their passport, and facing that many years, at least possibly in prison, would not comport the way he did. And you did spend this time with him, which is why you have these tapes. I'm going to bring in Maya. She's here to give us all of her reaction. But before I do, given that you are the person who busted out these Santos tapes, we have another statement he made, which is less related to the case, but involves him talking about, quote, a room full of Jews. Let's listen to that.
You sit in a room with a lot of Jews, you're it's funny when the isms start coming out, right? Oh, he's such a man, she's such a man, and then they go on to the next thing, and it's like, oh, that's a point, and it's really bad. But anyway.
Wow, so he's mocking people for the jargon that they use in their culture. Wow, that is definitely racist. And what he would tell people that he was Jewish, but here he is being anti-Semitic. I mean, this is no different than, people degrading black people for the way they talk.
That's, again, another piece of these new tapes you've recorded. So he's saying this to you, talking about a, quote, room full of Jews, then you're really blanked. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so, it came up when I talked to him. I'm from that district, so that's why I kind of had this interest in the story in the first place. I knew a lot of the players involved, and I thought I could bring kind of an interesting perspective to this crazy story. And so I came in, and we talked about the fact that I was from the district, and, it's well documented that he's talked about being Jewish. And that came up, and he asked me about that. And I honestly think, Ari, that he believes these things that he says, and he believes that he is Jewish. He said it enough times. He talked about some of his ancestry.
He is a compulsive liar, and a lot of those people do end up believing the lies that they tell because they're also very deluded people.
He has said before that he would get a 23andMe test, but that has not yet happened. So we'll see. And I think that he was honestly telling the story almost as if he was part of the in-group, as if he were Jewish and talking about the culture in that way. That was my read on it.
I will go to the grave before anybody on this planet asks me to reveal information prior to the relevancy of my service in office. I don't have to. I'm protected as an American citizen. Not because I'm hiding anything, just because out of spite, I won't do it. You know? Because
No, it's because he's hiding stuff.
it's my constitutional right, and I'm going to hold on to it. Just like people get to write whatever they want and call it freedom of the press, I get to have my constitutional rights too.
Blake.
Well, you all are the lawyers, and you can fact check his jurisprudence there. I don't know if he's going to do so well in court if he just doesn't want to talk about anything that happened. It doesn't seem like a great legal strategy. But yeah, I mean, that again comes this arrogance that he has, that he's just going to get away with it. And maybe, frankly, it makes sense because he's gotten away with so much in the past. I mean, as a filmmaker looking into this, we looked into his past and we looked into a lot of the things. I mean, there's stuff that he hasn't even been charged with. I believe there are more felonies just waiting, and these just might be the first ones that they found.
Do you believe that from other things he said to you?
Not from our conversations, but I will say there's been a lot of talk about, for example, international marriages where he was, he was married to a Brazilian woman. There's a lot of questions around that. There are people who were friends with him during our reporting. We found this, people who were friends with him who said he never hung out with his wife and he was living with a boyfriend while he was allegedly married to this woman. I don't want to get too far out on that, but there are other things that are definitely being looked at. But again, he's just totally confident in the way he goes about this. And one other thing I'll say is that when it comes to the unemployment charge we were talking about before, what he is saying in that tape is, yeah, I made $400,000 a year before, but then because of COVID, my salary went down to $55,000 that year. So therefore, I was eligible for unemployment insurance.
Right.
That's not how unemployment insurance works.
No, exactly. So because
Yeah, unemployment insurance is when you're not making money and you're actually fired from your job, not when your job reduces your income.
this is new. I'm not going to play all of it again. We did show that to the viewers, but again, these are new Santos tapes you recorded. Let's play a little part of him on the financial piece. We're going to play part of it. Let's take a listen.
So the way I look at it is they're not understanding. The question is simple. George, why was your income $55,000 in 2020 and why is your income drastically higher? Well, here's the answer to that. We struck a deal in the company so nobody went unemployed and got reduced to like a very basic salary.
That's part of what he said to you. We played it in full earlier. Go ahead, Blake.
He literally said, so nobody went unemployed. So let that hang in the air for a second, right?
Right, yeah, he did say so nobody went unemployed, including him. So how can you qualify for unemployment if you're not unemployed?
And then he collected unemployment insurance. Now, on top of that, the government alleges that he had a separate job in Florida that paid him $120,000. So listen, I mean,
And people want to complain about poor people collecting unemployment. No, a lot of the welfare fraud happens from wealthier people seeking to abuse the system because they know they have an easier time getting away with it.
I'm not prejudging the proceedings, and I'm not a lawyer. That's, you guys can give the legal analysis, but it just seems to me that there's something there that he's going to have to explain.